every thought that you have is going to, in this moment, every thought that's going through your head is determining your next moment. It's determining how you're going to respond, what you're going to say, how you're going to react, how you're going to function in the next few moments. And not just the next few moments, but the next hour, the rest of the day, in that relationship. So your thoughts are driving you. So go back to last week if you want to rewatch, and we I broke down what a thought is. But our thoughts are driving us. And if we don't manage our thoughts, we can really get ourselves stuck. And so a huge part of the neurocycle is to help you capture those thoughts and deconstruct and reconstruct them. But so the way to start finding those thoughts and seeing whether if they're good and they're helpful, grow them, practice using them more. Whatever you think about the most grows. And we'll get prompted by those as well. But if it's a thought that is a problematic thought, if it's a thought that's making you feel a bit on edge or whatever it's doing, if you just let that thought run randomly through your head, it is determining your next moment. So you need to ask yourself, what do you want in the next moment? How do you want to function for the rest of today? How do you want to function when you see that person? How do you want to be? Because the other thing about the thought is that however you are thinking that thought, it's not just some random thing. As you learned last week, that thought is in your brain as a tree. It's in every cell of your body as these wired up carpets, and it's in your mind. So it's all over you. So if you've got a negative thought or a toxic thought towards someone and you don't deal with it, it's going to come out no matter how you try and hide it. So you might be smiling, you might be saying all these nice things, but if you haven't kind of resolved it, it's going to be picked up by your body's going to give you away, your tone is going to give you away, your facial expressions are going to give you away. And it may not be completely obvious to yourself or to that other person, but they'll sense that something's wrong. I mean, you've experienced that as well. So our thoughts need to be managed. Otherwise, they're driving us. And if they're driving you in a direction, how you're functioning now, if you don't like how you're functioning now, or you don't like how you're functioning in a specific relationship, it's your thoughts that are driving that functioning. So our thoughts need to be captured. And so that's what the neurocycle is helping us do. So the way we do that is through the emotional warning signals. It's the start point to start training ourselves to self-regulate, to capture those thoughts and see what they look like. You can't change what's driving you if you don't know what it looks like, if you don't know the details, if you don't know what it is. So you have to first catch it. So the way you catch those thoughts is through the emotional warning signals. So your emotional warning signals work together as a team. There's 4 of them. They're like a team that don't ever break up. So as all 4 work together in this kind of back and forth, very dynamic way. And so we need to always consider all 4. And what I found from my research and my clinical research and my clinical work, and then over the years, the other work that I've done is that, and the research obviously, is that when you focus on your 4 warning signals as an interactive, sorry, I didn't speak properly there, as all interacting together. If you focus in, if you gather awareness, step 1 of those 4 warning signals in a very specific, focused, deliberate, and intentional way, you're changing your neurophysiology. You are activating a huge amount of oxygen to move to this part of your brain. You are changing the brainwave activity to put you into a very high focused state that will help you be more self-regulated. You're activating the potential for wisdom, for good decisions, for saying and doing the right thing, for managing that moment in the most effective way. Now, you can't manage anyone else. So you may, just side note, you may get yourself together and get yourself under control and go into a situation that you can't control. And then, fireworks can happen. But if you haven't got yourself under control, and then you're adding to the fireworks, at least if you're under control and managing yourself and knowing how to protect yourself in a situation and have yourself prepared for potential things that could be said that will trigger you and so on, then when you go into that situation, there's a good chance you will still be triggered, but you're going to be better prepared. And that's healthier for you. So learning to use our emotional warning signals is honestly such a life skill. So you use it throughout the neurocycle, but it's also really great to help catch yourself in the midst of a crisis situation or a challenging situation or something like that. Okay. So by now you know what the 4 warning signals are, but I'm going to talk about them in a little bit more depth, because the more you hear about them, the more you're going to use them effectively. I know that from just the comments and the feedback from all of you and over the years doing this, that this focused gathering awareness on these 4 signals helps you to zone in and starts changing how the bit of chaos that can happen when you feel very activated and very worked up by thoughts, triggered by various different situations, or feeling overwhelmed, or that you're stuck and that sort of thing. And this very deliberate, intentional gathering awareness of the 4 signals in this very specific, ordered way helps to calm down the neurophysiology tremendously, and helps to bring you into that zone where you can start becoming more aware of how you're functioning and more aware of what decisions you should make potentially, or tuning into your wisdom and all that kind of stuff. And the result of doing the gather awareness of the 4 signals also is going to increase, as I mentioned, oxygen and blood flow to the front of the brain and so on. Okay. So we know that the 4 warning signals are the emotions, the bodily sensations, our behaviors, and our perspectives. Okay, working together as a team. A nice visual and I've thrown this visual out for to people, but is that when you focus in on these 4 in this gathering way, where you're gathering, like if you went into an orchard and you were gathering apples, you would gather implies that you have control, that you've made a decision to move to that tree and pick that apple, not that apple, not that tree. There's gathering, there's a decision, there's a focus, there's a level of control. You're being empowered to be more in control. And that's really important when it comes to mental health, when it comes to being overwhelmed, is that feeling of being in control. So the simple act of focusing in on these 4 is help us zone in. Very, very helpful, calming down the neurochemistry and the neurophysiology. Okay, so there's the 4 warning signals. So let's talk about each in a little bit of detail, and then I'm going to kind of demonstrate and give you a little example. So first of all, these 4 warning signals that work together are messengers. They're not symptoms of a disease. They're not symptoms of a disorder. They're not symptoms of something about you that's wrong. They are messengers telling you information about how you show up. They're telling you the tip of the iceberg. They're bringing your awareness to how you are showing up in a very broad sense, because they're 4 and you'd use 4, maybe a few words for each, but you need to then do more work and dive in deeper, but you've got to start somewhere. So gathering awareness of the 4 warning signals brings the thought into the conscious mind. Now, from what you learned last week, thoughts are made of memories, and they've got this tree-like structure and so on. Now, when a thought is in the non-conscious mind and you're not consciously aware of it, it's driving you. But when you gather awareness by focusing on the 4 signals, you pull the thought into the conscious mind. When it's in the conscious mind, it becomes weakened. Okay, so I'm going to kind of shake this to give that kind of impression. So when it's a toxic thought, these are loosening up. When they loosen up, what that means neuroscientifically is that the proteins and the chemicals and the bonding, the connections inside of here are loosening up, which means that you're going to have a lot of what we call gamma activity. So the energy moving through this would be increased gamma. And that means neuroplasticity is going to be happening, and it's waiting to happen. Change is happening. This is kind of getting unlocked and ready for change. So these branches are starting to pull apart. And so the 4 signals, when you gather awareness of the 4 signals, you are pulling this into the conscious mind. Let me say that again. When you do your gather awareness of the 4 signals, you are pulling whatever is in the non-conscious through the subconscious and into the conscious mind. Okay? Next week, we're going to talk more about the non-conscious and the conscious mind and the reflect step. So that's we're going to focus on it, one or both. We'll just see how the time goes. But for now, I want you to look at this image again. As you focus on the emotional warning, on the 4 warning signals, they are pulling this thought into the conscious mind. When you're conscious of the thought, you don't see all the detail yet, but immediately its structure changes inside of your brain, mind, and body. And therefore, when it changes, it becomes, when I say change, it becomes open to change. It becomes weakened. It becomes unlocked. That's a good way of explaining it. So now you can fix this, because remember, you can't change what's happened, but you can change what it looks like, but you can't change it if it's locked. So the 4 warning signals help to bring this into the conscious mind so it can become unlocked. And when it's unlocked, that's when you start seeing the details behind the 4 signals. And that's where the reflect step comes in, where you're starting to see the details of these branches. And as I said, we're going to dive into each of these steps in detail. So let's stick with the 4 warning signals this week. Okay, so it happens with a healthy treat too. When you focus in on, let's say someone gives you a compliment, and you actually receive that compliment, because maybe you battled to receive the compliment, and as they give you the compliment, you actually, you focus on that, makes you, you feel good about yourself. So you feel excited, happy, good about yourself, which good about yourself would be perspective. Happy, excited would be emotions. Your behavior might be a smile on your face, and your bodily sensation may be like just a little jump in your step, just a little bit of. One child said to me the one time, and I love this way of explaining it, that when he feels happy, he gets this jiggly feeling in his body. So you might get a jiggly feeling in your body. And as you acknowledge those 4 warning signals, as you experience them and you actually notice them, as you gather awareness, you're noticing them. You don't just let them pass by, you notice them. You then pull this into the conscious mind. Now, what is this? It could be a toxic thought. It could be that compliment activates a healthy thought, and that healthy thought could be a bunch of other compliments that you've received over the years, but you'd forgotten about those. And because you've been feeling so bad about yourself that this was kind of shoved down in the dark somewhere. So by receiving that compliment, you pull this back up into your conscious mind, and it might be tiny and might need a little bit of work over the next 63 days to make it strong again, so that it actually helps you, because being able to receive a compliment shows that you have self-esteem and that you have self-value. It's not pride. It's actually the ability to understand your uniqueness. And the more that you appreciate your uniqueness, the more you can reach out to others. So the 4 signals can help you, make you aware of something that maybe you've forgotten about, and you need to revive inside of your life, because your self-esteem's maybe done a little bit of a dive. And your non-conscious mind knows that you need that prompting. So someone gave you a compliment, and you actually, instead of just glossing over, you spend a little bit of time on it. If you just glossed over it and didn't really take time, you wouldn't have brought this up into the conscious mind. So if you can imagine that as the person gave you the compliment, that's the incoming information. You're processing that into your mind. It's becoming a little network. And as soon as it's processed into your mind, remember, it goes into the roots first. Then your mind searches and finds this little tree, pops it up, and you actually add the compliment. You grow it onto this tree. So there's the root part, and there's the interpretation. They said you did really well in that presentation, and that's the root. And then your interpretation is, oh wow, I actually did. It was good. I can receive that. It was actually, I really enjoyed it. And so in that discussion with yourself is growing extra little branches, how you interpreted that compliment. You've made this a little bit stronger. Now I can go back into the unconscious mind stronger than before. And it's a brain building activity that acts like an insurance policy to help you to improve resilience. So when you maybe have another bad day, this is there. It's in the background. It's been activated. It can help you when you feel really bad about yourself, to remind yourself that, yeah, I have bad days, but you know what? And that's one of the questions people ask. If you're having a really bad day, it's you want to put on these trees as well. So the warning signals are not just about toxic stuff. They're also about the good stuff. But now let's say that you've got a situation, something happens, and that something happens triggers a existing past memory that you've possibly worked on quite a lot, but maybe there's an area that still isn't worked on. So it's going to pull that up. And instead of just glossing over it, you don't want to do that. It's going to go, because it's malleable and changeable. If you gloss over it, it's going to go back worse than before, stronger than before. If I just gloss over, and if I take the compliment and I gloss over it and I don't spend the time on it, it will go back, but it'll go back stronger than before, but without the new information sufficiently added. So it could be a different kind of strength. So you want to, by deliberately, intentionally focusing on those warning signals and taking the time to look at what is my conscious mind now focus on? What is the non-conscious sent through the subconscious into my conscious mind? What is it telling me? By doing that, you make this stronger. So you make it even stronger. It can have even more impact in your life. So you're taking advantage of a great situation and making it more beneficial to you by doing some work on it. So the warning signals are warning you, not necessarily of just bad stuff, warning you that this is information to pay attention. Do you want to grow this because it's great? Do you want to, or it's teaching you something, you're learning from it. It's a skill you need. It's a lesson to learn for another time. You're going to be, it's like, it's not a failure. It's something that didn't work, and that would be a positive thing. Or is it something that's toxic, that still isn't quite processed, that it's still something that's not quite worked through, and it potentially needs more work? And that these warning signals are telling you that. So the warning signals, if you imagine the 4 warning signals being like, those balloons when people have a birthday and whatever occasion, babies being born, whatever, you get the strings that they're full with hydrogen gas, and then they've got the string attached to them and they can float all over the place. Imagine that those 4 warning signals are those balloons with strings, but they are attached. What are they attached to? They're attached to the thought. So as you acknowledge each one, as you gather awareness by saying the little sentence, I feel, I am saying and doing, or whatever it is, my perspective is, I feel this in my body. As you do that, you are pulling this up into the conscious mind and preparing your neuroplasticity to take place and driving it in the direction you want. As I said, if you ignore it, you've created a vulnerability here for change, but you didn't change. So then it goes back to what it was before. But because it came back up and it didn't get fixed, it goes back negatively. And in a negative sense, stronger than before, which is not great. So you don't want that to happen. Okay, so let's say that it's on the negative side, the 4 warning signals trigger you. And so that if you don't pay attention to those warning signals, this is still going to be a problem, and potentially an increasing problem that could then influence the situation that's related to, whether it's something that's happened with someone that's been a long ongoing thing and it's in its stage of healing, but there's still certain things that will trigger. And depending on your reaction, you actually can see how what isn't processed, what you thought maybe was pretty much processed. The emotional warning signals are giving you information, messages that, hey, this is not quite fully processed. And if you don't fully process this is not good for your mind-brain-body connection. It's not good for your mental health or your physical health. It's not good for that relationship. It's not going to help anything. So you need to do some work on it.